All right, here we go. Okay, we're recording, and welcome to this week's Midnight at Oasis. Don't watch this, it'll throw you off. We'll put you back over here so that you can't see that because that's delayed for like 10 seconds. Where's my drink? Can't start without my drink because that's how I know where to start the...
We hit it.
That's how I know where to start the editing. All right, welcome to this week's edition of Midnight at Oasis. This week on Midnight Oasis, we got Ivan Zhidov. Zhidov? Sometimes it's Ukrainian, so sometimes I don't pronounce things right because I'm from Oklahoma. We don't even try to pronounce things in Oklahoma. We just redneck it. Ivan had the topic tonight when we were voting. Somewhere I put a book. When we were voting on our topics tonight, Ivan's topic was. What was your topic, Ivan? It was a good one. Can creativity be taught in a school setting? And of course, he got the most votes. He got 9 votes out of the 12 people that showed up. So you win, Ivan.
All right.
So tell us a little bit about yourself. Where are you from? How'd you get here?
I was born in Ukraine.
Okay, start. Get a little closer. Raised
in Russia. Came to the States in '95 and stayed here ever since.
Okay. What's your interest in creativity?
I'm interested in how creative works.
Okay.
Because why some people are creative, some are not, and how to develop it.
And how to develop it. Now that's the mystery everybody needs to solve, right? So your question is how can creativity be taught in a school setting?
And when I say taught, it's more developed because everybody has certain creative in them, certain potential.
Right.
But most people, it's not really developed. It doesn't go anywhere.
Right. Most people don't believe. The vast majority of people don't believe that they have a creative streak in them, or they don't have a spark of creativity in them. And from an evolution, I'm a biologist. From an evolutionary standpoint, I believe people have to have a creativity point in them because problem solving is a survival skill.
It's a part of their survival.
It's part of their survival skill.
Their DNA got there as far as they are.
So do you think you can teach or develop? How if you were to teach or develop creativity, how would you go about doing it?
Well, first you have to actually make people realize that they're creative and not let others tell them otherwise.
Right.
Because often they're discouraged or put down by others just because of their own insecurities or society, peer pressure, etc. So they don't get out of the box.
Right. I forget who was it said. I believe it was Picasso. It said everybody's an artist when they're a child, but the trick is to remain an artist as they grow up. And I say this a lot in here, and especially on the show. If you hand a piece of paper and a pencil to a 5-year-old and say, "Draw me a pig," that 5-year-old will draw a pig or draw me a cat. That 5-year-old will draw a cat and just be ecstatic and draw the cat, and it's the most beautiful cat the world has ever seen. And the 5-year-old's happy to show it to anybody. And if you sit down next to that 5-year-old and you draw a cat with that 5-year-old, that 5-year-old thinks your cat is beautiful too. And they're the 2 most beautiful cats in the entire world. But by the time that kid's 9, that kid believes that he can no longer draw. He believes that he can no longer create anything. His ideas are no good. So what happens to kill that?
I think part of it has to do with schooling. The way the current school system is set up, it's an institution. It prepares citizens to be able to play a certain part in the society.
Right.
But just from watching my own son be in the school system and from remembering my days in the Soviet school system, the kids are conditioned to be quote-unquote factory workers. They perform certain function and you stay in your box, and that's safe to them.
Right. Now I was going to ask you about the Soviet school system because I know in the U.S. we are still based on the industrial age school system where you're preparing kids to grow up and join the industrial age. They're going to work in a factory and they're going to work hard in a factory until they can become a supervisor in a factory, and maybe they can go on into management in a factory. But the vast majority of the education is designed to keep that kid in that assembly line process.
Right.
And the level of reading is only enough that you can read the instruction manual for the machinery that you're working. And I was going to ask you if the Soviet.
Yes, pretty much.
So what would you change?
you would have to really change the entire school system, which is not a realistic short term. You have to change the mindset of the people who supervise the system, the way they can actually see the power in productivity behind the creative, because to them right now it's kind of scary.
Right.
They don't like anything new, unknown, what it's going to ruin. Like example from my own experience. I go have lunch with my son on Wednesdays, and they encourage us to have it in the library, because in the cafeteria, kids are not allowed to talk.
Gotcha.
So for an hour, about 30 minutes, they have to be quiet completely.
So they can keep control of the kids.
I guess, I don't know, but
What about these? What do they call these schools where they take these kids and they put them in this? There's a name for these Montessori. Is it Montessori schools? Charter schools, where they put the kids in a group and they just go around from section to section, group learning, where they go out and they say, okay, let's go out in the yard today. It's a nice day. Let's go out in the yard.
Right.
And oh look, here's a tadpole, and let's talk about tadpoles, because
Right.
here's a discovery today that we can all relate.
it's
to.
more spontaneous, more dynamic, more creative.
The way people learned for thousands of years
Right.
prior to
But
the
that
industrial evolution.
implies more investment
Right.
into the education. You have to have smaller classes. You have to have teachers who are not just designed to follow a certain syllabus. They can actually they can actually develop their own things.
Right. It's hard.
The teachers themselves have to be creative.
Sure. And it's hard to develop. It's hard to develop a solid curriculum based on what kind of discovery you're going to make in the backyard.
Right.
Because I mean, if you're going to develop your curriculum and you're going to say, okay, what we intend to teach your kids for the next 9 months, we're going to teach your kids this level of mathematics, and we're going to teach your kids this level of reading, and we're going to teach your kids this level of science. Well, I'm sorry, we didn't actually find any algebraic functions in the backyard, so we didn't talk about it this much.
Actually, I just remembered a very good example. Back in my college days, I was invited to speak in one of the local schools about computer science.
Mm-hmm.
And so I gave them a nice speech about various aspects, how exciting computer science is. But at the end of my presentation, the teacher basically destroyed it all by one line. She said, like, children, you really need to pay attention to him, because when you go to Walmart, you need to know how to work the register. And just blew my mind completely.
Wow.
I was just mind blown. Just was
Go
lost.
to Walmart, you will need to
When you
know
go
how
to Walmart to work,
register.
you need to know how to work the register.
Oh, that's terrible.
Right.
All at the same time. All at the same time. And I've told this story on the show before, and we were talking about this the other day. When I was a child, we had an opportunity to draw flowers in the classroom, and the teacher said, "Today we're going to draw flowers." And I said, "Okay, well, I know how to draw flowers." And I took out my crayons and I started drawing flowers. And the teacher's up on the board drawing like 8 perfect petals, and a
Right.
circle in the middle, and a stem, and a leaf off to the side. And I'm drawing, a red scribble with yellow highlights. And my teacher comes by and says, "Well, that's nice, but that's not how we draw flowers." And she says, "You draw flowers like this." And right then, at that point, that child starts to die on the inside, because all the creativity is just ripped from you. And it's the same way in the second.
Yes, it basically taught that the value is in following in conformity.
Right.
Not in being yourself, but in conforming to the rules and following the direction given to you.
So your solution then is smaller classrooms, bigger investment on the teacher's side.
But also the family.
How do we get there from here? That's the important thing. Because you're right.
I personally don't think creativity can be developed in the current school system.
Not in the current school system. But
So
how
it
do we
has
get?
to start from outside.
How do we get from the industrialized factory school system to the creative Star Trek system? Yeah, that gets a lot of giggles, but you've all seen Star Trek. You all know what I'm talking about. Except Patrick.
I'm trying to remember. There was a good. I'm trying to remember this. There was a really good kind of like piece of wisdom that I saw. That basically, the society establishes what's important to it by basically giving importance to those kind of people.
Mm-hmm.
In our society, being successful means making money, having a job, etc., etc. Like, for example, parents say, people who actually raise the children really are not given much value.
Right.
So it starts with that. You have to assign value to the education and to the creativity.
We have to make that seem important to the child and to the family.
And right now we often compare it in, like, for example, they like to say, like, well, students in China are so much smarter than US students because they do so much better at math. Well, yeah,
right.
But what about all the creative, like how creative?
Right.
Where are we based on creativity?
Can they design their own mathematical formulas, or are they reliant on the existing?
Well, like again, like another metric they had, China has overtaken the US on the number of patents issued a year, on the number of research papers written every year. When they did the analysis of those patents and the papers, about 80 to 90% of them was plagiarized. So again,
right.
How much of it?
Right. So okay, so if we in our homes, if we value art and we stress the value of art and we hold the creativity, not just art but creativity in general, because when you say art, people think painting and drawing or music, but they don't typically incorporate poetry and prose and stuff like that into art. But I'm going to say creativity as a whole. If you hold creativity to a higher value in your home and show your children how much more important you think creativity is, then you develop creativity in the home, and that helps them express it better in the school system.
Right. Some of it has actually you can bring a homeschool aspect into it,
right,
by providing them with the.
So that's the short term. That's the best short term answer.
That's the best. It's the most practical, most pragmatic. Don't try to change the school system. It's a long term approach, but give them something right now.
We had a couple of questions from the online audience. Do we have any questions from the studio audience? Do I need to separate the two of you? There's too much giggling and petting going on over here.
I'm sorry.
Okay. Are there any questions from the studio audience? From the online audience, we've got Jurian is actually an instructor. He's from Norway. You're from Norway. That has moved. He lives in Washington State now, and he is an instructor at the college level. And he's talking all about how it depends on how the classes are taught, versus if you teach the class this, and this, then you're going to drive the creativity out of people. But if you teach the class in a creative fashion, you can incite creativity. Now that's a pertinent comment. I mean, it really does depend. As long as the teacher is following the testing patterns, then we're never going to break that. But if you get a teacher that follows the creativity pattern, that tries to let the children in the creativity lead the classroom, does that make sense?
Yep. Our schools right now actually, like you said, they're designed for the industrial age, but they are factories.
Right.
The point is to make them very cost effective, to spend the least amount of money you can to produce as many students as you can with a certain level of knowledge. But what it does, it gets its conveyor.
Right. We put our kids on an assembly line.
Right.
We put our kids on an assembly line. Okay, we're going to wrap this up. I appreciate you. I appreciate you taking the time to visit with us. And guys, thank you very much for let's give it up for Ivan. Thank you very much. But I want to end this with a quote from Mr. Holland's Opus, and it's one of my favorite movies of all time. And there's a quote in the end there. They're continuously cutting the art program, the music program, and the literature program. They continue to cut those programs, and even today in real life they continue to cut those programs. And in Mr. Holland's Opus, Mr. Holland makes the comment that you can cut the arts all you want to, and focus on reading and writing. But if you cut the arts too much, there won't be anything to read and write about. So with that, I'm going to leave it. And thank you very much for joining us on Midnight at Oasis.